Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm happy to have you join us here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and what we're going to do is look at different life cycles, and we're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances, believe it or not, are usually more about the emotions than they are about the money. And the healthier we are emotionally, the better decisions we tend to make in general. We're going to be fairly general in our discussion, but we'd love to hear from you. So please reach out to me on my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your questions, your comments, anything that you want on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else you might be listening to us. Today, we're going to be talking about going through a divorce and beyond. And thank goodness, going through a divorce, as challenging as it is, there are many resources available to people. And it's a great need for those resources. Adjusting to your post-divorce life is also challenging. And unfortunately, there are not as many resources as there are to get you through your divorce. So we have Carolyn and Mimi, the co-founders of ReBranding Divorce. They are here to help us, and they focus on exactly what we want people to understand. You've got to think beyond the divorce. You've got to rebuild your life. Between the two of them, they have a lot going on. They have certifications in coaching. They have certifications in being a Reiki master, meditation coach, and possibly the most valuable in some ways, they have experience from life cycles of their own and personal experience in trauma that they have experienced, they bring into the workplace to help you. Mimi and Carolyn, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. I think this is such an important topic because, as I said, we focus so much on getting people, so to speak, to the dotted line when they sign, but sometimes we kind of forget they have to rebuild that life. So welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask you if you can just share a little bit about your background so that people do understand, get a sense of kind of the passion behind what you do, why you do it, and how you came to doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. And what you said about not having resources after divorce is really true. And that's kind of how we came to be in our partnership and also in how we serve our clients. So I'm Carolyn Bilyak. I am a certified life coach. I'm a Reiki therapist. I have many certifications in meditation coaching, and went through a really, about 10 years ago, went through a really trying divorce. I was divorcing as my kids were launching into the world too. So I was like empty nesting, divorcing. My life was really changing. And I looked around for guidance. Like I just wanted a roadmap. How has somebody done this successfully before me? And I didn't find what I needed. I found a lot of communities that were sort of like willing to keep me in the pain of the divorce, but not really willing to get me beyond it. So that's really, my background and what my motivation was to create ReBranding Divorce.
Great.
Yeah.
Maybe a little on you, if you would.
Yeah. So I'm Mimi Sullivan, and it was very interesting because Carolyn and I were kind of going through the end of our marriages and the divorce process simultaneously, but because you can feel so isolated and there's so many emotions that come with divorce, there's shame, there's guilt, all of these things that really want to keep you quiet, and you don't necessarily want to talk about all the messiness that might be happening in your life. So we weren't even initially aware of what each of us was going through. So that sense of isolation and the unknown of what's next was really scary. So then when we started talking to each other, there was a deep sense of relief that now I can talk to someone that really understands, because your friends and family can love you and want the best for you. And it's hard to truly understand if you haven't walked and done this exact same thing. And my divorce process was very interesting because in the middle of it, my husband passed away. And the difference in how people treated me as a widow versus how they treated me as I was divorcing was very illuminating. And I think that a woman after divorce is overwhelmed with all of the things that she needs to do. And I think that the first thing you need to do is find someone that gives you that sort of sense of calm and peace and the belief that you can get through it. And there really is something good on the other side. Like, I think it's really hard to imagine that life is going to be fun and joyful and doable and exciting, and that all of those things are still available to you, even after, especially right after the heartbreak and pain of going through your divorce. Even if you're the one that wanted the divorce, like even if it's an amicable divorce, we've coached a lot of women that didn't have really messy, traumatic divorce processes, but you still get to the other side and it's like, well, now what do I do? Now who am I? What should be my first step at this point? So that's kind of what sort of pulled me together and helped Carolyn and I come up with this.
There's so much.
Each other, like, let's give this to other people too. Let's invite other people into the same space we've created for ourselves.
There really is so much in that. Number one, people do treat very differently widow versus divorce. One of the things going on in my head when I went through my divorce is, boy, if I share what's going on in my head and the pain and the insecurity is, no one's going to ever want to be my friend, right? So it's easy sometimes, as you said, to start to isolate or think I'm in the worst position in the world, nobody understands. But that's sometimes why it's so important to find the right professionals to help you, because many of them have been through a divorce, so they understand, or at least if they haven't, they have the connections to put you in touch with people that can, or they can give you a structure to help you work through. There's so many different ways that people can help each other. But unfortunately, if you don't reach out, and that's hard, I'm not minimizing that, but that becomes a very difficult thing. And, going into your divorce or through your divorce, it does bring a lot of uncertainty, as you had mentioned. And it can make somebody very insecure, and maybe they've been made insecure in their marriage. Why is it common for women to feel unsure of what comes next, which is something you kind of alluded to but didn't get into?
Yeah, what we've experienced personally and watched thousands of women explain to us, like demonstrate to us, is that people are so engineered to be a couple when you're in a marriage, right? So you're compromising here and changing there, and here's who we are as a couple, and here's who we are financially as a couple, and here's what we like to do, and here's how we spend our time. And then you spend many years doing that, and now you're an individual again, right? So now it's like, oh, I'm not sure I even know who I am or what I enjoy doing or what my financial earning power as a single person is. If I have this great landscape ahead of me, this is one of the things that was really interesting to me and painful to me. And when I was getting divorced, is I had this big landscape in front of me. The kids are leaving, you're getting divorced, what now? And everybody felt like that should be exciting. And it was in a way, and it was also terrifying, because I'm like, that's just a big blank slate. And I've got to start internally, right? Figure out who I am, figure out what I like. And so that insecurity after a divorce is very real and takes intentional healing and questioning and figuring out to get your feet back on solid ground.
And I will tell you, the very first blog I ever wrote was all about the opportunity, because I kind of felt my life had died because I'd been married 20 years. I didn't know who I was. I knew from a coupleship, from a father, from those kind of perspectives.
Exactly.
But absolutely had lost who I was. And I work mostly with women, vast majority of people. And a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s. I've even had somebody in her 70s. And I find also generally that, and I'm a very broad brush here, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but I find often the spouse is the one who has been the major breadwinner, or maybe has the accounts, or maybe managing the finances. Do you think that plays in the insecurity? Because I've had women that come to me, they've literally never paid a bill in their life. That was always on their spouse. And they, much of their life was a stay-at-home parent or whatever it was. Do you think those kind of things play in as well?
Absolutely, Hirsch. And I think especially from a female perspective, from a very early age, women are not taught to discuss money, to want money, to think about money. You know, all of the images that you see about bankers and Wall Street and the financial world are very male. So the whole language and accessibility of money has seemed foreign. I always worked my whole life and throughout my whole marriage. I actually spent years working in the financial industry, and then I ended up as a buyer. So all of my experience was with numbers and a lot of it with money. And I still came out of my marriage feeling broke and how am I going to handle this and unsure. So my immediate thought was, if I can get my money under control, everything in my life is going to be okay. Like, that's the only thing I had to focus on. And that's all I focused on. So it was good. And I did get my money under control and kind of dug out of debt, and am now, you know, financially successful and excited and sharing that with as many other women as I can. And like you said before, money is more than math. It's more than numbers. It's the emotion and thought behind it. And when you haven't had any experience dealing with money, or it's been just, you know, sort of transactional, I'm paying my bill and I'm getting my salary, you know, but I'm not thinking further out than that, because all of my future plans were with my spouse. What we were going to do was what we were going to do together. And now I think part of the fear coming out of divorce is now I have to take all of that on by myself. Yeah, go ahead.
Control is a huge piece of that. We feel like we've lost total control often. Or sometimes we have been controlled and abused, whether it's financially or you know, inadvertently, advertently, whatever it might be. And I think that plays in. One of the things that you say on your website, which I love this phrase actually, is you're functional but not free. And I think control can play into that quite significantly. My advice when I'm working with clients, whether it's the financial piece, which obviously I work to help them get there, but it doesn't have to be, take some small wins in where you can get control and you can see it's possible. Sometimes you just need a little education or a little support for the, you know, the more complex pieces of your life, but it's absolutely doable. So what are some of the reasons, I guess, women don't feel safe or supported? It's a little different to, you know, what we've been talking about, but I think it ties in probably as well. So that feeling of safety, that feeling of support as they try to rebuild. What are some of your thoughts around that?
Okay, I just want to say I can see Carolyn wanting to jump in because that sense of safety was so important to her. So I'm really excited, Carolyn, to hear what you're going to say here.
It's interesting because you know, every marriage is different, right? All the nuances of marriages are different. Some are very unsafe marriages, and some are safe while you're in it and then feels really unsafe. So that unsafety can come from so many places. But again, it's I was anchored to this reality, right? And making my way through this reality. And now my reality has totally shifted. And if I was in a super safe marriage that I thought was safe, right? And that rug's been pulled out from under me. Now I feel completely unsafe in the world. I might be in my 50s. I might be in my 60s. Everything that grounded me, maybe I was a parent, maybe I was a wife, a stay-at-home mom, whatever that is, working, but now I'm thinking about how I'm going to make up that extra income. All of that feels super unsafe. Plus, you're thrown into these conversations with your friends, like, just get back out there and date. Just get all of those. It's like, I can't even breathe yet. And now I'm supposed to learn how to date for the first time in 25 years. And that landscape's changed. And then if you come out of an unsafe marriage, it's like, I'm already unsafe. And now I'm unsafe, untethered in the world. And unless you can find a safe place to land, like really trustworthy, mentors, trustworthy advice, trustworthy group, it can feel very lonely. And I do believe women do find their way if they're determined to find their way, but it can take a lot of years, and you can become functional, but not free, right? Like you said, like, we can all become functional after marriage, but you see those women who thrive after divorce, and you think, what are they doing? Well, they're doing these things with finding a safe community. They're finding resources. They're getting a roadmap. They're being determined, have that grit. Like, I'm not going to settle for functional.
and I think historically people tend to date similar people, and then they get married, and that's all you know. And so you somewhat think that's all that's out there, or believe that's all that's out there. And being able to test the waters. But again, often people will say, you need to do the work, right? There is work. And part of that work is understanding who you are and what is good for you and what's not so good for you. And maybe there's, as I say, that bad boy attracts women. Well, why am I attracted to that if it's not a good thing for me? So I think there's a lot of introspection that needs to happen with people being able to move forward. And sometimes even before you want to, or maybe before you do start dating, you may want to date, you may want that companionship, that special other person. But if you're jumping into the same relationship, is that really what you want when you break it down?
Yeah. Well, part of our roadmap deals with healthy relationships. Like, let's just get centered on what a healthy relationship even is.
Yeah.
Because no matter what happened in your marriage, the divorce skewed that. Like, let's get grounded in what that is. Let's figure out what a healthy relationship with myself is. Yeah. And then stop thinking that like these bad boys or this type keeps picking me, and realize like, oh, I'm actually picking, there's something about me that is looking for that dysfunction. And I need to heal that before, if I want to date, have a new relationship experience.
Right. And I think that's valuable in so many ways, because if it didn't work out this time, why do we think it's going to work out the next time with the same kind of person, right? Are we just, destined to repeat history? And obviously the goal of getting into a relationship is to have a healthy relationship, be fulfilled, to bring your value to the relationship, but also share in what they have to give as well. And if you haven't really thought it through, if you haven't identified these red flags, if you haven't identified the green flags, if you haven't identified what really brings you joy, whatever it might be, you're kind of shooting blind, and you're really not going to be able to, outside of luck, you're really not going to get into the relationship that maybe you want to get into.
Yeah, we have a really powerful exercise that we do. It takes a while to do it and to really get into it, but you really, as a person, identify what your non-negotiables are, what your deal breakers are, which are two different things. And then an exercise on like, if I know what those are, then my red flags become so much easier to spot, because I have this litmus test. Like, right. I know, and I can come home from a date and be like, I can look at a worksheet and say like, oh, there were deal breakers all over the place, but I wasn't recognizing it because I'm so in my pattern. And it really helps you get out of that and start realizing the type of partner you do want and what to start looking for.
Yeah, a funny kind of vision went in my head is like creating a scorecard, and you come home from the date and you score them kind of thing.
We have it.
Okay. So, but the truth is, until you can really do that on your own as you're interacting with them, that's really something that can be extremely helpful. Yeah. But ultimately, you want to have that as you're engaged in a date or in an interaction with them, as opposed to, after the fact kind of thing. And I think if you're doing it as it's happening, you're going to be less biased, because, I identified it, as opposed to going afterwards, well, I kind of like them, so I'm going to be a little easier on them.
Right.
On the grade, right? So,
but I do feel like people need that bridge, because getting to the I can do it on the spot is a skill set, right? Like that's right. Being able to notice your own patterns, and yeah.
And it really is going to help you weed out and save you a lot of, I think, stress, anxiety, and heartache, obviously, because you can be in that conversation, you can be present, but at the same time, you can really identify this really isn't the right person or, setup for me. And it's not fair to that other person either, if it's not the right person, to string them along in any way as well. So with that, I'm going to ask you to give some information on how people can get in touch with you, because we do have to go to a break.
Certainly. Well, you can check us out on our website, ReBrandingDivorce.com. We have lots of resources there. And you mentioned your first blog. We've got some really powerful blogs that give a lot of information. You can sign up for our newsletter. when you're on our website, or you can just email us directly, info@rebrandingdivorce.com.
I encourage people to do that, and I've been on the website as I pulled out a couple things. I think you can get a lot of value out of it, and we will be right back. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This is the Financial Wellness Hour, and I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the show. Today we have two great guests helping you to rebuild, and we called it ReBranding Divorce. We're also teaching you a little bit on how to rebrand your life. And I think we covered so many things. I'm going to try to cover all of them. And sorry, I should have mentioned the guest names, Carolyn Bilyak and Mimi Sullivan. We did speak a little bit about your backgrounds, which I really appreciated, how you kind of came together, understanding a lot of the time, really, we isolate and don't reach out and understand that other people are going through what we are going through, and that can be so helpful. We spoke a little bit about insecurity. We spoke about unsure of the future, what to do next, safety, support. That phrase that I said I loved, functional but not free. I think, as you said, it's so true. We can become functional, but does that really mean that we are living life, or does it mean we're on automatic? And then we spoke about losing yourself to the marriage, being able to identify who you are, healthy versus non-healthy relationships, being able to bring that into engagements with people to understand if these are good situations. And I think that's most of it. I don't think that's everything. So, but we will continue. I just think sometimes we get so much in and we kind of forget. It's always helpful to recap and think about some of the things. But one of the things also, you can go on the internet, you can look at a million websites and all the rest that you want to do, which is important. You should be educated. I'm a big champion for being educated. But being educated as to what applies to you is a very important piece of that. I'm going to put it this way. There's a lot of myths out there related to divorce. What are some of the biggest myths about starting over that you've seen women struggle with?
Well, there's always the super obvious ones, like I'm too old. We hear that a lot. I don't have enough money. I don't know where to start. We actually have a blog on the biggest myths that are out there that you can read. And I think just a sense of overwhelm also helps compound those myths. And I just want to toss out there really quick. We've talked a lot about wanting a roadmap, and you were just talking about there's so much information and where do I start? Those were some of the very earliest conversations that Carolyn and I had. There's so much to do. And if you think about just anyone's life, whether you're male, female, divorced, single, no matter what age, you have so many decisions every day that you are battling through and trying to figure out your life. And you come out of divorce, and the biggest decision that you are asked to make in your life is who I'm going to partner with on this journey. And so you come out of your divorce thinking the biggest decision I had to make, did it turn out the way I wanted it to turn out? Like, you know, I don't want to think that like it was a failure, but I didn't have the outcome I was hoping for. So it kind of shatters you a little bit in your self-confidence and your sense of self-worth. We haven't talked a lot about self-worth tonight, but that's one of the things that can dissolve as your marriage dissolves and you're trying to figure out what to do. And now you have all of these decisions. So Carol and I just started writing down all of the things that we had to focus on. Like, oh yeah, if we could do this, if we could do that, if we could do this. And we had very different perspectives of what those things were and how important they were. But we found they all kind of bubbled up into these 4 specific bubbles. And so we created our own framework, and it's called the post-divorce growth cycle. And so if you think about that, everything falls into kind of 4 areas there's what we've been talking about, this like, who am I? Like, how do I get back in touch with my authentic self? So you kind of have to figure that piece out and play with that. But then the second one, which I was totally disconnected from, was this sense of, we call it radical self-care. I thought that was a luxury, that you got to go get a manicure or a pedicure or something like that. And Carolyn really opened my eyes that really entitles like how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you put in boundaries. I'd never even heard that word before. I had no boundaries whatsoever in my life. And then of course there's the money piece, which, you help women with so much, and people after divorce. And, that's a beautiful thing. But we really focus on money and just your belief that you're worthy of money. And then finally, the pieces like Carolyn talked about a little bit earlier was healthy relationships. And then if you can think about this framework in just these 4 pieces, it will shatter any of the myths that are out there. So the myth that I'm too old, like, no, I'm not too old for any of these things. Like I don't have enough money. Like that doesn't fit in there. I said, so I think having a framework and, it simplifies it, it takes the stress out of it, and it makes rebuilding your life feel more doable. And like Carolyn said, most people are going to get there eventually, but it doesn't have to take 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. We've even coached women that are 10 years past their divorce and still struggling. And to have a framework and to find the community to work through that framework can really speed up that process.
Yeah, and
as you were talking, Meme, I was thinking like about the myths that I believed. I didn't know how you were going to pull our framework back together. That was so beautiful. But I was thinking about the myths I believed. I was too old. I was 47. I was too old to start over. I couldn't do it. That's my myth. I was never going to be able to financially make any major purchase on my own. My kids were not going to be okay. I couldn't single parent them through this really well. And I just look back now, that's almost 10 years ago. I'm clearly not too old, because now I've got bigger plans for myself than I ever had at 47. I know I can accomplish so much more. I'm enthusiastically looking forward to it. I've bought my own house. I've bought cars. I've taken great vacations. I've, bought a little house in Maine to refinish. Like everything I thought, every myth, had I stayed in that myth at 47, my life would be probably functional right now, but it wouldn't be free. So myth busting is huge, is what I'm trying to say. And using that framework to do that, to get out of your own head, is really essential.
And I think, they always say, why recreate the wheel, right? I mean, everybody wants to get to that post-divorce. You don't have to do it on your own. It's already been created, and the support and the framework, etc., utilize that. It makes so much sense, right? And I do want to come back to the functional but not free. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit, because there's almost like a mind loop that goes on sometimes with divorced people, and moving beyond that loop is maybe a little bit of freedom. So I remember speaking, for example, and this is talking about the functional. I remember speaking to a client. This is probably only 3 weeks ago. And it was late afternoon. And I said to her, well, how's your day? And she said, well, I got the kids off to school and I got dressed. And that was an achievement for that day, right? Talk a little bit about that, and maybe add to, if you can put it maybe into your framework, because I'm curious also, are there areas that people struggle with more in those 4 pieces of your framework versus, some of the others? So I know I've thrown a lot at you. So
yeah,
if you need to repeat any of that, obviously we can. So
I don't think from our experience, there's 4 parts of the framework. I don't believe that we could say, oh, women struggle with this more. I mean, obviously, healthy relationships is a real hot topic, and kind of one that women are scared to delve into immediately, because that wound's pretty fresh. But it really all comes down to, where are your limiting beliefs? What was your messaging in the marriage or as a child? For me, I was all about radical self-care and let's meditate, let's get our internal resources really strong. But I was a financial mess. And Mimi, I sat on her screen and porch during the divorce, before ReBranding Divorce was even a idea in our mind, and said, Mimi, I just need $1,000 a month. If I can get $1,000 more a month, I'll be fine. And that was getting me to functional, because I could not believe that it could be beyond that. Like if I could just, like your client said, I got kids to school and I got dressed, and that's a success. The whole idea of being free was not something I could mentally hold right now. Mimi, because she's so good with connecting the emotions of money with, instead of the numbers of money, was like, oh honey, we're going to get you more than $1,000 more a month. But in my mind, I knew exactly where every penny of that I'm going to be able to pay tuition, and then I'll be able to do this. And I had it in my mind all budgeted out, and then I'd be okay. So the idea of getting functional is necessary in those first, right? We all have to get functional.
Right.
But we really want women to dream way beyond that. We really want that freedom to be the goal, and to know for each person, for each woman, that is possible. Like you don't have to stay in functional.
Well, I would also say sometimes getting to functional gives you confidence to get to freedom. And we got to celebrate the small wins. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. Because there were many days that functional seemed like a dream.
Right. And functional in one area doesn't just build confidence in that one area. Like getting functional in money when you didn't think that was possible builds self-worth. It builds how you step into relationships. A lot of women repeat patterns with relationships because they feel financially unsure. So it's like, I better go find me a man, because I'm not going to be able to do this financial journey on my own. And so they don't pay any attention to relationships, haven't done any of that work, and they don't feel worthy necessarily of figuring it out. So they can really get stuck in that sense of
and sometimes I think people don't realize how far they've come, right? And I try to be very cognizant of bringing that to the forefront, to be able to say to my clients, hey, I just want to recognize something here, and I want you to. You would not have been in this mindset of thinking this through a month ago, 6 months ago, whatever it would be, right? So it really is important to understand some of these little wins as we go really build up to very big wins. And we do have to wrap up. So I'm going to ask two things from you guys. One, I know that you're opening up a new program in January. So I think this is very timely. People can reach out, learn a little bit, and sign up. I'm going to ask you to touch on that, and then give like kind of a last thought, inspiration, if you can do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are really excited to be opening up in January a new community for divorced women called Ready for More. This is based off of, the last 10 years of us really working with women live and going on retreats, and also having self-paced courses. And what we've noticed is that women thrive in community. Like we can give you all the resources, you can download them, you can sign up for courses, but where the transformation happens the quickest is inside of a community where we can share things like what you were saying earlier, Hirsch, like see how far you come. When you're in a room with another woman who's just starting the journey, you can look at yourself and say, oh my gosh, I used to be there and now I'm here, and it hasn't been that long. And also when you're that new person, you can look and say, oh, that woman's already there. I can do that too. So that community is so essential. It's called the Ready for More community. And again, it starts in January, and you can get on our wait list now so that you get all the information and some early bird bonuses and things like that. But Mimi and I are super excited about that. And you can reach out to us at info@ReBranding Divorce for more information if you want to talk to us one-on-one.
And I just want to give one quick anecdote of a moment that happened in one of our group sessions. We were in a Zoom. The group is online, so you can join us from wherever that you want. And I don't know, maybe there was 20 women on the screen all talking. And one of the women was talking about how she didn't feel worthy because everybody that she was seeing on the screen were so amazing. And she could mention something beautiful about each of those women. And I think Carolyn just looked at her and said, and you are one of these women. And I mean, all of us just had tears coming down because she couldn't see that, but all of the other women could reflect that back to her. So to be in a really positive and space like that's just beautiful.
I love that. That's amazing. And I want to thank you, because emotions and working on yourself It's a little sticky. It's not linear. There's a lot that goes on, but being able to break it down, share your thoughts and insights, create the structure for people to be able to do it in a more kind of methodical manner, I think is just such a good way to go through this, even though it's not linear, even though it's kind of sticky with the emotions, but it gives you the things to think about. It gives you kind of the tools. It gives you that community, which is so, so important. So Carolyn and Mimi, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I am your host, Hirsch Serman. This is the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me on my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, whether it's questions for me, Carolyn, Mimi. And I want to thank CC Schatz, as always, for the magic behind the screen to make this so easy and so much fun. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I look forward to you joining me in a couple weeks on my next show. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me.